Hi, and welcome to the first Flipped Collaborate for the TP. My name's Karina Stocker, and I'm the UC for Supporting Inclusion for Primary. These Flipped Collaborate sessions are recorded in advance so that you can watch them in your own time. And the sessions also feed forward to the live Collaborate session, where you'll have opportunity to ask questions. The live Collaborate session for Assessment 1 is on Tuesday the 24th of July at 7:30 p.m. If you're unable to make it on the night, then don't worry, we will make sure that there is a recording made available to you. So welcome, let's get started. So Assessment 1 in a nutshell, it contributes to 40% of your final mark. The word count is 2,000 words, plus or minus 10%. And the overall purpose of this assessment is to deepen your understanding of policy and its implications on the way we teach children with additional needs and those learners who are culturally diverse. It's due on Monday the 6th of August at 5 p.m. So generally preparation is key for success, so please note the key wording from the assessment details and apply your knowledge from the learning materials and also wider reading and use it to scaffold and support your assessment findings. This task requires you to write an analytical essay in which you consider 3 policies and the implications of these policies on teaching students with diverse needs. Now let's take a look at these assessment details further. Okay, so within your essay response, you need to define wellbeing and inclusion. You need to summarise the key elements of the policies. You need to critically analyse the policies. You need to consider implications of these policies on teaching practice. And you also need to adhere to APA referencing conventions and demonstrate competence in academic writing. So let's break this down a little further. If you note the bolded text, these are the keywords to guide you in your investigations. And considering these keywords will set you up for success. So these keywords have been covered in the learning materials, so they are your starting point. So defining wellbeing and inclusion within a primary context, that's quite straightforward. So make sure you're using the learning materials and also wider research to assist you in responding to this element of the essay. Okay, so in relation to policies, you'll be influenced by the state in which you intend to teach in, as you need to draw on state policy and federal policies. Now, we've provided you with the federal policies. You need to seek out your own state policy. And if you're unsure of the one that you've selected, then post it on the discussion board and your ELA will be able to give you a yes or no as to whether it is appropriate for the essay. Okay, so rather than just being a description of the policies or a summary of the policies, this essay requires you to critically analyse the policies. That is, you need to make connections to how the theoretical, broader societal and educational context impacts on inclusion and wellbeing practices in the classroom. Because all of these things, these 3 things, are impacting on how we as teachers teach children. So you'll draw from the policies specific and relevant information that demonstrate your insightful understanding of the key concepts and the implications for teaching practices in regards to these policies. You will hopefully use concrete examples to illustrate your argument in regards to the impacts of these connections on your teaching practice. So these are examples that show how policies directly influence teaching practice or classroom practices. You need to support your response with relevant readings and wider research of academic literature. And of course, as within all education units, you need to use APA and good academic writing elements such as appropriate spelling, punctuation, grammar, sentence structure, and overall essay structure. And doing all of this demonstrates your competence here. Okay, now if you have a look here, there are 4 tasks. We've got define, summarise, critically analyse, and consider. We're going to break these 4 tasks down a little further for you. The first one we'll look at is define. So define, to explain or identify the nature or essential qualities of, or to describe. So you need to explain or identify the nature or essential qualities of wellbeing and inclusion within a primary context. So you are describing wellbeing and you are describing inclusion for this first task. Okay, now let's look at summarise. Summarise the key elements of the policy. To summarise is to make a summary of, state or express in a concise form the key elements of the policy that specifically relate to inclusion for additional needs and culturally diverse learners in a primary school needs to be stated or expressed in a concise form. Remember, this is not meant to be an in-depth description of the policies. We want rather a short and sharp summary of each of the policies before you start your critical analysis. We don't want your whole word count to be used on the summary. This is not the main part of your essay. The main part is your critical analysis and your consider. So you're doing 3 policies, 3 short, sharp summaries of the policies is all we need to give us an idea before you go into your critical analysis. So in saying that, the third task is critical analysis, critically analyze. So let's have a look at that a little more closely. So as individuals, we face this task with numerous personal biases. These are all based on our own personal experiences and views of the world. You may have experiences with your own children or those close to you or yourself, but for the benefit of your studies and future teaching practices, we would like you to take a step back, view the materials from an educator's perspective, and justify your findings with relevant academic literature and research findings. This is not an opinion piece. You are critically analysing policies and linking this discussion to relevant academic literature. You need to support all your ideas with academic literature. This is really, really important with your academic writing, and this is the word where the term critical comes in. So your critical analysis must involve skillful judgment as to the truth, merit, etc., by drawing directly from the policy documents and connecting them with your research findings from supportive literature within the learning materials and beyond. So you may have a certain belief about inclusion and well-being based on your personal experience. However, you must be able to justify this throughout with academic literature. This is where the critical analysis is really important. And this is all written in third person, obviously. Okay, let's go back to the last task, and that's consider. Consider the implications. Oops, sorry. Okay, so this is where this section, the consider, is where you will fulfill the consideration of the implications of these policies upon your teaching practices. So it's consider, to make use of as relevant, suitable, or pertinent. So after looking at your critical analysis, using that information to consider whether the policies are relevant to the classroom. Are they suitable to the classroom? How are you going to make use of the policies within a classroom environment? So I say you, however, this is in third person, and it all needs to be supported by academic literature. So you're making use of those findings from your critical analysis, and you're identifying whether they're relevant, the policies are relevant, suitable, or pertinent to the encounters that you're going to find within your teaching practices. You can include those concrete examples here. How is the policies changing or implicating your teaching practice? What examples might you bring there? Okay, let's move on. The assessment criteria is reflected throughout the holistic rubric, so please ensure that you are meeting each of these as you are compiling your submission. So you must be aiming towards these 4 things that are outlined here. Knowledge and understanding of additional needs and culturally diverse learners, that you have depth and breadth of knowledge. This comes in your research, how wide you are reading. You've analysed the policies, and you've also used good academic expression. So that's the assessment criteria, the overall things that we're looking for. Okay, this reminder is really important because the rubric is what the ELAs are marking against. SOL has a rigorous moderation process, which ensures that ELAs interpret and follow the rubric in the same manner, therefore ensuring that consistency and fairness is maintained for all students. The rubric is almost like having a cheat sheet in some way because we're showing you exactly what we're looking for when we're marking your submission. Okay, so we're going to look at the pass and high distinction grading within the holistic rubrics now. All of these aspects within the holistic rubric must be met in order to achieve this grading. So your piece of writing is viewed as a whole. So for you to pass this assessment, you have to have met these 7 descriptors or dot points. If you don't meet one of them, then we actually can't pass you. So even if you're aiming for a high distinction, I always advise you to look at the pass grade and use it as a tick box to ensure you're ticking off every descriptor that is listed here. Okay, let's go through it. Your essay includes a clear definition about well-being and inclusion for children with additional needs. If you have not defined these two terms, we cannot pass you, so it's really important. The second descriptor or dot point says that your essay must have an introduction that defines the topic of the essay. So that's the first point. It needs to outline the topic of the essay. But it also needs to provide a structure of the essay. What will the essay be discussing? It will be critically analysing policies and considering implications on teaching practice. So make sure you're including these two things, defining the topic and providing a structure. Because if you don't do these two things, we can't pass you. So use this as your tick box. Your paragraphs need to explore one key idea each. Your essay includes a summary of the key elements of state and federal policies. Again, if you don't include a short summary of the policies, we can't pass you. You have identified factors which impact teaching practice in relation to the policies. So you need to have the consider section done. You need to have relevant scholarly literature, and your written expression is consistent with the requirements of a university course. So you'll notice in the pass grade there's no mention of critical analysis. This is more of a basic essay to get you a pass. If you haven't done any of that critical analysis, but you have all these other elements here, then you can pass. So as we move on to the high distinction, you'll notice there's a bit of a change in the language. We know that you have already met the pass grade, the credit and the distinction to be able to get a high distinction. So you have to meet all the grades before if you want to get a high distinction. So we're going to look into this further in the live collaborate, and you can ask questions and we'll break that language down because we don't have enough time in this session. So let's move on. And if you do have questions about any of the language used here, bring that to the live collaborate session or post it in your relevant discussion board. Okay, this is an example only, an example of an essay structure. It's definitely not a strict guideline. This can be modified to reflect your own understandings of the assessment requirements, and it should just help you a little bit. So make sure that you're engaging your reader in the introduction by outlining what your essay will cover and why, and then draw your essay to a close with your conclusion. Your conclusion should not include any new information. It's only a summary of what has been covered in a succinct and engaging manner. It is to tie up all those loose ends. Again, this isn't a strict structure, but it's there to guide and help you in how to write your essay within the word count. Okay, some general tips. The assessment is to be written in the structure of an essay. Third person is to be used throughout your submission. Critical analysis requires evidence to support your arguments. Ensure you reference accurately. You can see your student toolbox for further APA referencing tips, and you need to support your findings with a wide range of relevant research and references from our weekly readings and beyond. Ensure that you utilise your word count effectively and fulfil each of the rubric criterion, and carefully proofread your completed work prior to submission. Reading it backwards can help you to identify spelling errors. Just a little tip there. Okay, support. So, here are the best sources of assistance. Use the discussion board to chat as a whole group about any issues or angles concerning the assessment. By posting questions on the discussion board, we all get to learn from the questions and answer. Post up that policy if you're unsure. Post up the language from the high distinction if you want to just break it down with your ELA and other students so that you really understand the requirements. Sometimes the words in the rubric can be quite jargony, so chuck it in there and say, what does this word mean exactly? Your fellow students at ELA are there to help. So attend the Collaborate session on Tuesday the 24th of July at 7:30 p.m. To have any further questions answered. Ensure that you research widely, respond to the criteria, and submit by the due date, and you'll do fine. Okay, thanks everybody. I look forward to seeing you at the live Collaborate. Okay, take care.